It was an ordinary summer day at the start of July, but it turned into something I could never have anticipated. My name is Clara, though most people just call me Claire. I'm a polite, well-mannered woman who takes pride in her appearance. Believe it or not, I still maintain a regular fitness routine to keep myself in shape. I'm on the shorter side, with fair skin, short brown hair, and a prominent figure that has always made shopping for bras a challenge. As a seasoned confectioner, my days are usually filled with baking, crafting sweets, and enjoying the quiet simplicity of life. I've always thought of myself as a respectful and reserved person, but over time, especially through my interactions with my step-grandson, I've discovered a side of myself I hadn't acknowledged before. His name is Adam, and he's 24, tall, broad-shouldered, and full of youthful energy. Whenever I find myself in need of company, or simply feeling alone, he's there. Perhaps that's why his visits have become so meaningful to me. Adam's mother, the daughter of my late husband, lives in another state, though she doesn't visit often. Adam makes a point of coming by from time to time. With each visit, he seems a little bolder, his mischievous smile and sparkling eyes hinting at a side of him I can't quite decipher. I live alone in a cozy house with a small yard, and when he arrived that day, I greeted him with a warm hug. His strong arms enveloped me, but I couldn't help but notice the way his hands lingered ever so slightly. I didn't say anything, brushing it off as nothing more than a passing moment. After settling in, Adam mentioned he wanted to freshen up after his trip and headed to the shower. Meanwhile, I busied myself in the kitchen, preparing some treats and keeping my hands occupied with work. Not long after, his voice called out from upstairs, "Claire, could you bring me a towel?" I grabbed a fresh towel and made my way up to the bathroom. As I approached the door, I realized it was slightly ajar. For the first time, I saw Adam in a way I hadn't before. Completely exposed, his confidence radiating as if he were entirely unbothered by his lack of cover. In that instant, I forgot two important things: that I was there simply to hand him a towel, and that Adam is my step-grandson. A fact that made the moment feel both surreal and complicated. I knocked lightly on the door before stepping inside. "Claire, you didn't have to come in," he said, his tone casual but his eyes locked on mine. "Oh my gosh, I am so embarrassed," Adam stammered, his face crimson. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. I chuckled, trying to put him at ease. "Don't worry, sweetheart. It's just me. And besides," I added with a wink, "what's beautiful deserves to be admired. Wouldn't you agree?" His blush deepened, and he averted his eyes, the tips of his ears turning a delightful shade of scarlet. It was then that I realized he'd momentarily forgotten I was his step-grandmother. The way he fidgeted, the way his eyes darted around the room, and of course, the very obvious evidence of his admiration, all pointed to a level of discomfort that was both endearing and a little bit exciting. He snatched the towel from my grasp, mumbling something incoherent as he hastily wrapped it around himself. A mischievous grin spread across my face. It seemed the next few days were going to be far more interesting than I had anticipated. From that moment on, a playful tension hung in the air between us. It started subtly, with a lingering touch here, a suggestive glance there. But soon, it was Adam who was pushing the boundaries, pulling me into hugs that lasted just a second too long, his hands finding their way to the small of my back, his eyes sparkling with a playful glint. "Grandma Claire, behave yourself," he'd say with a laugh, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down my spine. "And please, don't tell Mom about this. She'd kill me." I'd laugh along, reveling in the unexpected intimacy that had blossomed between us. It was thrilling, forbidden, and utterly intoxicating. Never in my wildest dreams had I imagined feeling this way about my step-grandson, but the undeniable connection between us was impossible to ignore. Leaving the bathroom, I returned to the kitchen, a smirk playing on my lips. We ate dinner as usual, making small talk, pretending nothing out of the ordinary had happened. But beneath the surface, my mind was racing, replaying the scene in the bathroom, imagining where this newfound connection might lead. The next morning, I decided to have a little fun, inspired by a scene from an old movie. I pretended to be stuck in the washing machine while I was doing laundry. Adam, darling, can you come here for a moment? I seem to be in a bit of a predicament, I called out, injecting just the right amount of panic into my voice. I held my breath, anticipating his arrival, a mischievous grin spreading across my face. The whirring of the washing machine drum abruptly stopped, leaving me trapped in its humid embrace. Adam, I called out, my voice echoing with a playful hint of distress. Darling, could you come help me? I seem to be stuck. A moment later, his footsteps hurried down the hall, his voice laced with concern and a touch of bewilderment. Claire? What's going on? You keep calling my name. Your step-grandmother needs a bit of assistance, sweetheart, I chuckled, trying to maintain a lighthearted tone despite the awkward predicament. It seems I've gotten myself wedged in the washing machine. Be a dear and pull me out, but do be careful. As he drew closer, I could hear him murmur under his breath, his voice a low rumble that sent a shiver of anticipation down my spine. This woman, what am I supposed to do with her? Teasing me like this, driving me crazy. He must have assumed, with my head practically buried inside the machine, that his words were lost in the hum of the appliance. But every syllable, every hushed confession, reached my ears. Setting my pulse racing, Adam knelt down, his strong hands reaching in to assist me. His touch, accidental yet electric, sent a wave of heat through my body. Help me, honey, I purred, my voice soft yet suggestive. Don't leave me stranded in here. Claire, I'm trying, he stammered, his breathing growing heavy. I could sense his hesitation, the palpable tension that crackled between us. Then, he paused, his fingers hovering near my waist. Can I tell you something? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Of course, darling, I replied, feigning innocence, though my heart pounded against my ribs like a captive bird. He seemed to struggle for words, his frustration evident in the clench of his jaw. I can't stay here much longer, he finally admitted, his gaze flickering with a mixture of desire and guilt. If you were a man, you'd understand. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. What's wrong? Adam, are you feeling all right? I asked, my voice a picture of naive concern. He shook his head, a sigh escaping his lips. It's not that, Claire, he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. It's you. Seeing you like this, well, let's just say it's making it very difficult to think clearly. And if I stay here any longer, I might end up doing something I'll regret. His voice trailed off, leaving the air heavy with unspoken desire and the threat of forbidden passion. The scent of laundry detergent mingled with the musky aroma of his cologne, creating an intoxicating cocktail that fueled the flames of our unspoken longing. I could feel his eyes tracing the curves of my body, his gaze lingering on the outline of my legs pressed against the glass door of the washing machine. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the rapid beating of our hearts. I knew, in that moment, that we were both teetering on the precipice of something dangerous and exhilarating. I'm not sure you'd be into this, Adam mumbled, his voice barely above a whisper, the unspoken confession hanging heavy in the air between us. His eyes were a whirlwind of emotions, a potent cocktail of apprehension, desire, and undeniable tension. It was clear he was wrestling with feelings he wasn't prepared to confront. yet I couldn't deny the thrill that coursed through me. Seeing him caught between his morals and his primal instincts only intensified the strange, almost electric connection that crackled between us. Wanting to give him an out, I feigned innocence, pretending I was oblivious to his intentions. "I don't know what you mean, Adam," I said, my voice light and airy. "Just try pulling me out one more time. I think I can get free this time." He seemed to buy my act, his brow furrowed in concentration as he renewed his efforts. This time, I allowed myself to slide free easily, as if his persistence had finally paid off. The look of triumph on his face was almost boyish. He genuinely believed he was my hero. Little did he know, the entire scenario had been a carefully orchestrated performance, with me as the director and him as the unwitting star. He breathed a sigh of relief, still completely unaware of my little game. But as his gaze met mine, I noticed a subtle shift in his demeanor. His posture changed, his eyes darkened, and I could sense him trying to suppress a wave of emotions: excitement, embarrassment, and a hint of uncertainty about how to proceed. The unspoken tension between us hung thick and heavy, a palpable force that filled the room. Though neither of us dared to voice it, we both acknowledged the invisible line we had crossed. The thrill of our playful deception lingered in the air, forging a connection between us that intensified with every stolen glance, every unspoken word. Suddenly, Adam stood up, his movements stiff and almost robotic. I'm going to take a shower," he declared, his voice strained. I watched him retreat from the room, his escape a clear attempt to evade the awkwardness of the moment, or perhaps to cool down the fire I had ignited within him. But as the door clicked shut behind him, I couldn't help but smile. The game had just begun, and I was eager to see where it would lead us. The anticipation was intoxicating, a heady mix of danger and desire that made my heart race. The air crackled with tension. Adam, his face flushed and his eyes wide with surprise, seemed utterly bewildered by the unfolding situation. I, on the other hand, felt a surge of power, a sense of complete control over the narrative. Remember my earlier assertion about walking into the bathroom whenever I pleased? I had meant every word. From the outset, each action, each seemingly innocuous move, was a calculated step in a meticulously orchestrated plan. The opportune moment was drawing near, and patience was my only ally. I needed to wait for the perfect opening, the precise instant to strike. As Adam stepped into the bathroom, I sensed the window of opportunity swing open. My pulse quickened, not with anxiety, but with the thrill of anticipation. The moment was upon me. I approached the door, my hand hovering over the knob, when a curious sound reached my ears, a rhythmic, faint noise that piqued my curiosity. It took a moment to decipher, but the intrigue was too strong to resist. Without a second thought, I knelt down, my eye drawn to the keyhole. The sight that greeted me was unexpected, to say the least. Adam, alone and blissfully unaware of my presence, was engaged in an intimate act of self-pleasure. His concentration was absolute, his focus solely on the sensations he was experiencing. I was transfixed, captivated by the raw vulnerability on display. A strange cocktail of emotions surged within me: curiosity, excitement, and a hint of something forbidden. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as I stood there, my mind awhirl with thoughts I couldn't quite grasp. He remained oblivious to my presence, lost in his own world. But as I sensed his climax approaching, an impulsive urge took hold. Without hesitation, I turned the handle and pushed the door open. Adam's reaction was instantaneous. He recoiled in shock, his face a mask of surprise and embarrassment. "Claire, what are you doing? You scared the living daylights out of me!" he exclaimed, his voice laced with panic. I maintained my composure, my expression betraying no hint of the inner turmoil I was experiencing. "Didn't I tell you I could come into the bathroom whenever I wanted?" I responded, my voice unwavering, a hint of playful dominance in my tone. The scene hung in the air, thick with unspoken tension and a sense of transgression. Adam, still flustered, struggled to regain his composure, while I reveled in the power dynamic I had created. The game was afoot, and I was in complete control. "Well, I've decided it's the perfect time for my shower," I said with a calm smile, stepping further into the bathroom. "And I'd like to take it now. May I?" Adam blinked, clearly still trying to process everything that had just happened. After a brief pause, he managed a slightly nervous smile. "Sure. Go ahead, Claire. But just so you know, I'm not responsible for what might happen." I couldn't help but smile at his attempt to regain control, deciding to push things just a bit further. "Oh? And what exactly do you mean by that, Adam? Are you talking about your tool?" I glanced pointedly down at where he was still trying to conceal himself. "There's no use hiding it. I saw what you were doing." His face turned a deep shade of red, and for a moment he stayed silent, clearly at a loss for words. He hadn't expected such directness from me, and I could see he was struggling to process the situation. It wasn't my intention to embarrass him, but his reaction was impossible to ignore. After a long pause, he mumbled, "You left me like this. It's your fault." I met his gaze, feeling the intensity of the moment as it hung thick in the air between us. "So it's my fault, is it?" I said, my voice low. "Well then, let me fix that." The tension was electric, undeniable, and in a moment of sheer impulsiveness, I closed the distance between us, leaning in to kiss him. The warm spray of the shower cascaded over us, heightening the closeness and intensity of the moment. It was the first time I had ever acted so boldly, so out of character, allowing myself to surrender to something completely out of the ordinary. Especially with Adam, someone I never thought I would share a moment like this with. At first, I surprised even myself with my actions, but as the moments passed, I realized I was enjoying it immensely. Every touch, every movement awakened something in me I hadn't felt before. What was happening between us felt both wrong and irresistible, a delicate line I was crossing willingly. Reality was knocking at the door, but in that moment, it didn't matter. All that mattered was the connection between us, the water pouring down like a futile attempt to cool the fire building within me. Adam pulled back slightly, looking at me with a sideways smile that was equal parts surprise and mischief. "You're really something else, Claire," he said, his voice filled with accusation and a hint of playfulness. "You provoked me on purpose, didn't you?" I smiled, matching his playful tone. "I was just testing you, darling," I replied with a mischievous glint in my eye. "And congratulations, you passed with flying colors." At that point, the air crackled with unspoken tension as we stood in the bathroom, the warm water cascading over our bodies. The unspoken game we had been playing was now unmistakably clear. The simmering tension between us transformed into an undeniable mutual desire. We knew it shouldn't be happening, but stopping felt impossible. The world seemed to fade away as we shared our first truly intimate moment, the intensity almost surreal. Each touch, each movement, carried a sense of urgency I had never experienced before. Time stood still as we explored one another, swept up in a current of adrenaline, connection, and forbidden passion. When it finally ended, I felt an overwhelming sense of calm, yet a part of me was still buzzing with energy from everything that had just unfolded. A mix of satisfaction and anticipation swirled within me, excitement for what had just happened and curiosity about what might come next. About 30 minutes later, I stepped out of the bathroom, my body still tingling with the aftershocks of our shared moment. My breathing was still uneven, and my heart raced as the memory replayed vividly in my mind. I walked into the living room, knowing Adam would join me soon. Even from different rooms, I could feel the charged electricity lingering between us, as though the very air carried the weight of our connection. I sat down on the sofa, my damp hair still clinging to my neck, and waited. I knew it wouldn't be long before we were drawn back together, unable to resist the pull. As I sat there, the minutes seemed to stretch endlessly. My mind raced, reflecting on everything that had happened, Would it change things between us? Was this just the beginning of something larger, something I might not be able to control? One thing was certain. That afternoon had altered everything. There was no going back. We were now connected in a way that felt entirely different, something deeper and more complex. A part of me knew it wouldn't take long before we found ourselves drawn back into the fire that had ignited between us. When Adam returned to the living room, he didn't just sit beside me. He moved in close. So close, in fact, that I could feel the warmth of his breath. The air between us felt charged again, even more intensely this time, and his curiosity was unmistakable. Adam looked directly at me, his gaze unwavering, almost as if he were mesmerized. I felt my face flush, heat rising to my cheeks as a wave of embarrassment washed over me. He had been looking at me like this more often, and each time, the intensity left me unsure of how to react. I tried to hide my discomfort, but he noticed. He broke the ice with a soft laugh, his lightheartedness immediately putting me at ease. Relieved, I joined in, and the tension between us melted away, transforming into something easier, something almost playful. It amazed me how quickly things could shift between us, from charged and tense to a shared moment of laughter. And then, out of nowhere, Adam leaned in, playfully nuzzling against my shoulder, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I was so taken aback that I didn't know how to respond. He laughed as he did it, his tone light but affectionate. "Claire, you're amazing," he said, his voice soft and sincere. "I love every detail about you." Despite the playful delivery, there was a genuine warmth behind his words, and it caught me off guard. I could feel his affection shining through, unfiltered and real. The way he admired me, the way he saw me, was something I hadn't felt in a long time. When he said I was beautiful, that he loved every detail about me, I knew it wasn't a joke. He meant it, and that realization touched me deeply. It filled me with a quiet joy I couldn't fully describe. Maybe it was the simple fact that, in his eyes, I felt important again. Or perhaps it was the unconditional love that radiated from him, reminding me of something I hadn't known I was missing. His affection was so raw, so real. Adam looked at me with such warmth in his eyes that I felt a blush creep up my neck, staining my cheeks crimson. I was speechless, completely caught off guard by the intensity of his gaze and the sincerity in his voice. A shy smile played on my lips, my heart fluttering in my chest like a hummingbird's wings. It was a sensation I hadn't felt in decades, a forgotten melody suddenly resurrected. Despite my initial shock, a wave of tenderness washed over me, bringing a genuine smile to my face. There was something so pure, so innocent in his affection, that it disarmed me completely. Before I could even gather my thoughts, Adam leaned in, his lips brushing against my cheek in a feather-light kiss. It was a simple gesture, yet it sent shivers down my spine, igniting a warmth that spread through my entire being. It was a feeling of belonging, of being cherished, a feeling I had almost forgotten existed. In that single touch, he conveyed a depth of emotion that words could never express. It was a silent promise, a declaration of affection that transcended the boundaries of our unconventional relationship. Lost in the moment, I decided to let go, to surrender to the emotions swirling within me. I trusted Adam implicitly. He was my step-grandson, yes, but our connection was unique, a bond forged in mutual respect and understanding. "Okay, Adam," I whispered, a playful lilt in my voice, my earlier apprehension completely forgotten. "What is it that you desire from your grandma?" He met my gaze, a mischievous glint in his eyes, yet his voice was husky with emotion. "It's all yours," he murmured, the words hanging heavy in the air between us. We returned to the bathroom, the atmosphere charged with a palpable tension. The warm water cascading over our bodies seemed to amplify every sensation, every touch. We moved in sync, our bodies intertwined, a silent dance of passion and desire. It was more than just physical intimacy. It was a profound connection, a meeting of souls. That evening it happened again, and again the next day and the day after that. Each encounter was more intense than the last, each touch electrifying, each kiss a spark igniting a wildfire within me. By the week's end, I found myself living a life I hadn't dared to dream of, a life filled with passion and exhilaration. It was as if Adam had awakened a part of me that had been slumbering for years, a part of me that craved intimacy and connection. He had shown me that life, even at 65, could be an adventure, a journey of self-discovery. For the first time in decades, I felt truly alive, my senses heightened, my spirit soaring. I embraced this newfound freedom with open arms, determined to savor every moment, to explore the depths of my desires without reservation. I no longer cared about societal norms or the judgment of others. Their opinions were mere whispers in the wind, powerless against the storm of emotions raging within me. This was my life, my journey, and I would live it on my own terms. If others chose to accompany me, they were welcome, but I would no longer dim my light to appease their expectations. These experiences were just the beginning, a prelude to a life filled with passion and adventure. I knew there were countless possibilities waiting to be explored, countless moments waiting to be seized. If my story resonated with you, please subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up.